and welcome to another episode of Fintech Focus TV with me, Toby Babb. Today, very excited to be joined from a new continent. We're out in Cape Town in South Africa this time with Ludre Stevens from iNBOTiQA. Ludre, how are you?
Good, thanks, Toby. Good to be with you today.
So you've taken the flight, you fled London for a little bit and managed to get out of town, and it seems to be going all right there in South Africa at the moment.
Exactly. The day after lockdown ended in England 2 weeks ago, I took the flight, I took the chance, and so I'm so pleased to be down here, get some sunshine, and just working remotely from here as opposed to working remotely from London.
Absolutely, no difference, as we're going to talk about a little bit later on, I think. But I think it's I feel very jealous seeing that sort of sunshine flood in through the windows next to you. And you told me about some of the views, and Cape Town is one of my favourite places in the world. So I'm sat here jealous of you, but well done for managing to get out, and I hope you have a brilliant time out there. So look, loads and loads that we're going to be getting into today, and I'm excited about this episode. But before we get into that, give us a little bit of background about iNBOTiQA, about yourself and the story so far.
Absolutely. So my background is I used to work in several of these large investment banks in the back office operations division. And over there, my job was to optimize all these processes around booking these complex trades. But ironically, all these things go and flow through via email. And so one of my jobs was to fix this process around how do we make sure we process every single email, because in banking, every single email has a dollar value attached to it. So anyway, did a few solutions there, and then the big bang happened in 2008. So we all moved on to other places, and then I moved to another bank, and then my boss said to me, please, can you solve this email problem again? And I thought, no, actually, I'm going to quit, I'm going to resign, and I'm going to start from scratch. And so then I convinced one of my colleagues from banking, my co-founder, who's based in India, and we started a brand new company, the predecessor to iNBOTiQA, and we built this email workflow tool called Udemail that solves all the pain points around email, but keeps all the benefits around it. So we don't say don't use email or use chatbots and these things. We just solve the pain points. How do you track, count, and manage it? However, neither my co-founder and I had any idea how to start a business, do venture funding, grow, scale, all those things. We just, like Reid Hoffman says, you jump off the cliff and then you assemble the plane on the way down. So our route's been very bumpy. We have one of our mentors and one of our strategic investors always says, we are a genuinely authentic experience, because we made every mistake that there is to make, and we recovered from it, obviously. But so we have great war stories of what to do and what not to do. So anyway, it's been 9 years. We've now finally assembled the plane. The plane's on the way up. And so, we've got great clients, great products, good traction. And so I'm glad to say that we never hit the ground, although we did scrape the ground a few times.
Got to have the bounces, right?
Exactly.
So the aeroplane's becoming a rocket ship now.
And in fact, that is exactly our analogy. So we have a strategic investor who's brought on a professional management team for us, and he's put rocket fuel into the company. So that's nice. been really nice. Yeah, exactly.
So tell us what that's looked like.
Well, so obviously, people always, as product guys, both my co-founder and I, we always focus on getting the product right, getting clients happy, all those sort of things, and then doing management as the second part of the business. And so what's really, really good about our new strategic investors, not only are they nice people and nice guys, because I met them on a fintech deal mission to New York with Boris Johnson, mind you, in 2015. So they come on board initially as investors and mentors, and then eventually they join our company and brought their professional management team on board. So that obviously meant a bit of a reshuffle. So I went from CEO and co-founder to co-founder and chief product officer, which is quite nice, because that is my strengths and my sweet spots, my strengths basically. And they brought on a nice senior management team, a great chairman of the board, and also some other expertise that you need out the box. So we relaunched the company, repositioned the branding, made sure our big clients were really felt assurance because of the new investors. And since then, we've just been growing steadily. We are quite lucky, because you always hear these horror stories about people bringing on investors, VCs, and then they change the culture and they change the board, and eventually the founders get kicked out, and so on and so forth. And so I always count my lucky stars that that we don't have that story.
Yeah.
We made every other mistake. Yeah. So
I'll tell you what, if there's a mistake not to make, it's that one. That seems like the right area not to make a mistake in to me.
This is a great saying. Like investors are more permanent than marriage, because you can't get divorced, right? Because you can't get. So
no, absolutely. So tell me a little bit about that investor story, because you've been involved in various different routes and programs, as you say. How did that come through, and what's something, when we talk about war stories, talk to me about the war story of why that was successful. And I don't think it's just luck when you have a decent investor. It's obviously a lot of due diligence on both sides. How's that worked out well for you, and what are some of the things that people should be thinking about when they're moving into that sort of decision?
Yeah, so so our first few years of operating, we did friends and family seed round of investments. So that were people who were in our immediate professional network and friends network that help us invest, which is what you need for early stage, because they have to believe in the team and the idea and the concept. Also not be overly burdened on admin and those kind of things. And but what was really good when we brought on the professional investors, they obviously have seen everything before, and so whereas we thought, this is terrible, or we haven't done this properly, or we're lacking over there, they said, of course this isn't great, of course this isn't, it's not the way it should be done, but we've seen before, and that we'll clean up and work with you guys to get it around that. Nothing, of course, is ever painless or simple. So, for example, when we had to get them on board, I had to do this thing called the everything list. So I had to, on the everything list, declare everything that I think they should know about, so they didn't discover anything later. And it was very uncomfortable, because now you're thinking after 8 years, or after 7 years, that you're so used to having to pilot everything yourself. So you used to just close holding, because also as a startup, you always have to build this momentum and vision of, we're going somewhere, we're doing so great, we're doing these big things, and you don't then always talk about your weaknesses, or you are 2 months behind on creditors and things. And so especially if you're trying to convince investors to invest, you don't want to show them everything under the kimono that you don't want them to see. And so to their credit, they said, well, he sat me down and said, it's now time to do the everything list. And obviously we had to go through clean up and fixing and all the sort of things, and it wasn't easy. But that's why I keep saying we were very lucky, because we have positive investors. But I must also say, at that point, we've been talking and working together for 3 years. So it wasn't a brand new relationship. It wasn't a brand new arm's length investor. It was someone that we've been working on for a while, convinced them to invest, convinced them to come mentor us. And so there was some track record, and I think that really saw us through. The big thing, though, is at that same time of investing and having to do the everything list, we also then started the Barclays Techstars Accelerator program, so last year in January. And at the same time, we're also going live with a large bank. So we're starting a new program that took up all our time. We had to do the cleanup, because so the everything list was part of a due diligence process, because we wanted to raise another angel round, and we were going live with a new client. So it was definitely the most hectic time for me for many years, because it was 3 big things all at the same time. I must say,
the same, isn't it?
Yeah, precisely. But I must say, we have this famous story, one day, so we were in the Barclays Rice building in London, and there wasn't enough meeting rooms. So I had to go do a demo, an online demo via Zoom with another client, and I had to go stand in the shower room, because that's the only place where it was quiet, and the demo, and I had to turn around a dustbin, put the laptop on the dustbin to do the demo. But I also had our CEO with us to talk with us. And so we literally had people come trying into the shower room to try and shower, and then we had to push them out again. And so it was doing demos in the shower room, to having to sit down with new investors, going through the everything list, to going and being all kumbaya with the Accelerator program. It was definitely an interesting thing. And the point I was trying to make was that at that point, we were together for about 6 months now, working together with the new management team. And it was very surprising how we just managed it. And I'm not sure, I think it comes from our relationship, but also we're all professionals. We're all at that point, late 30s, early 40s, and so we just know how to organize ourselves. I think if you a younger team or team without that relationship, you kind of just, things will just fall apart. But I look back at it, and I think I'm so glad it's over, but it was also quite exciting, doing demos in the shower room.
I love that. It's one of my favourite stories. I've heard all sorts, but two people in the shower pitching on a dustbin probably there's something for the autobiography. There's something for the memoirs right there. I'm looking at that.
Yeah, no,
absolutely love it. So that's the story we'll dive into, and I think there's a load that I want to talk about with regards to this sort of muse of mine around products at the moment, which I think is a really interesting subject to go into. But first and foremost, I want to go into something which I think is really, really important this year. And as you know, I've done sort of 100 of these, over the last few months, speaking to loads of really cool people all over the world who've thrived in adversity and done some incredible stuff. Alongside that, they've been speaking to clients who've been going through the exact same journey, the unknown, the difficulties, the dislocation of work in from ways that we've never had before in really complex sort of ways. And that's required people and the businesses, in my mind, who time and time again have thrived the most through this. And as you said, that there's a story of continued growth and the rise of the plane into the rocket ship has come through from this sort of stage, which is absolutely fair play to you. And I think a great story and something you should be massively proud of. But within that, it's usually because companies are looking very much at that customer issue, and they're looking and empathizing and thinking about their customers' problems. And looking at how they, how that's sort of changing for them as well, and providing solutions that can help them through that journey. Tell me a little bit about how iNBOTiQA's done that, and how you guys have looked at those sort of issues your customers are having, and help them to get through this period as well.
Absolutely. So there's two things that I think is worth mentioning here. The first one is the product, and the other one is the delivery mechanism. So we are quite lucky in that our product is actually geared for people working remotely or people working in offshore locations. So as I mentioned, UDmail is an email workflow tool. So it helps you to allocate owners to any tasks based in emails. And then you can do reporting around how my work is distributed in my team, what's open and closed, where are we at risk of missing deadlines, and those sort of things. So Udo is actually great for people who used to work like 5 people around a desk. Now they all work 5 people from home. So how do you know who looks after what case? Who do you know who said what about what case? And so Udo itself lends itself very well for people working remotely and in different locations. So we were quite lucky that with COVID means there's a high demand for our product. Having said that, our clients are large institutional banks and outsourcing firms. So these are people with like big, teams of thousands of people who now suddenly had to go work remotely, and all their processes got dislodged. And so suddenly they had to roll out a new product and get them trained. Now, we are quite lucky again in that our team has been a remote team all along. So my co-founder has always been based in Mumbai. I've always been based in London. We've always had teams around us in those locations and in Belfast. So for example, we have this rule, like when we're on a team meeting, you always have a camera on. And we had this even before COVID struck, because if you work in remote places, you have to be able to build rapport, have communication, those sort of things. So Absolutely. What was good about that then is like when our clients had to go through this, now we all have to work remotely, and now suddenly we have to be trained remotely. Our team was already very well versed in that space. So just going back to the question, so we actually did go lives in 5 new locations since COVID. So we've already had 14 locations around the world, from New York to Malaysia to Hong Kong. We also rolled out now in Canada, Israel, Russia, and a few other locations, because these people now needed our tool. And what's really good about it is that we just went from classroom style training to 5 people on a Zoom with exercises. And so the thing for us over here has been that our product lends itself very nicely for remote working, especially when it comes to asynchronous working and location independence. But also our method, we adapted very quickly. Like you have to go train these people and support them. And you can't do 20 people at a time. You have to do 5 people at a time. But I must say, luckily, because we have always been a remote team, that learning curve was less for us. So we can spend more time on getting our customers up and running. Because also half the training we do isn't about, this is how the features work in the product. It's we have to help them adapt their process, which is old email based, to process that is new email based, which is quite nice.
Yeah, absolutely. So that sort of that I think that's really interesting, isn't it? With particularly with a product that's set up for remote work, you'd have seen an increase in that over recent years, where people were suddenly starting to to lurch a little bit more towards that, particularly with offshore development teams and such like, I guess, as well. With this now happening with the rate that it did and the forced nature of it, no one wants to be seen to be profiteering at these sort of times. But at the same sort of stage, it's the opportunity, right? You're there and you're thinking, right, if something can happen which accelerates and helps our business model and our product, going back to that sort of nature of product management and the robustness needed for it, it brings great challenges as well as great opportunities in that sort of mode. Tell me a little bit about how you dealt with that and what was the thought process when you're saying, right, this is happening. Yeah. This is something which we need to react to. This is something where we need to put our customers here and educate them and help them. And you can see rapid and accelerated growth in the product set and the sales that would probably come through from that sort of stage. What was the whole strategy that went into play come sort of February, March that last year, where this was also starting to play out? March, it sort of accelerated very quickly, and as well was going into meltdown. You've got to think there and think very quickly about how you restructure. And as we all did, everyone suddenly had to completely rip up the playbook and build a new one as they were flying it, as you were exactly. That's what you were saying about earlier on. Tell me a little bit about that journey.
Absolutely. So I think there's three things. One is, so you're absolutely right. You don't want to profit when other people are having a tough time. So I must say our company did not aggressively or pursue that angle whatsoever. When the crisis happened, the first thing we did was, is our team okay? So are they set up? Are they okay? Can they cope with this from a mental health perspective? And we did a lot of work up front to make sure our team is okay. There's communication channels. We also, for example, launched this thing called our Team Lounge. So we have a standing Zoom room that's open that people dip in and out of during the day, just to have chit chats in between meetings, or like how's things going, so that you don't just jump on Zoom meetings, work and jump off. So the first thing was make sure our team is okay, because there's no point in trying to help other people if your team can't cope in itself. But we did see some technical challenges when this COVID thing happened, because people used to use our product on their corporate networks in their office buildings in Hong Kong and London and New York. Suddenly people now working on flimsy Wi-Fi's from home, logging on via these VPNs, and are suddenly there's way less bandwidth available for them to do all the functions that they used to do, from phone calls to their desk jobs to everything else. So we very quickly had to optimize UDmail and our suite of products substantially to cater for low bandwidth situations. So for example, whereas before, if someone says, oh, show me all this case data for this email, we'll just give them all the information. We have to actually throttle that so that they don't have performance issues. So we had to be responsive to that very quickly, which was both a challenge, but we're quite lucky in that our products were already deployed. So all we had to do was that optimizations. The third thing that we had to do, as I mentioned, was on the how do you support the rollout of this product to teams that are now working from home remotely in smaller cases. So we had this concept called a design partnership with our larger clients, whereby we work very closely with them, all the way from requirements to deployment to pricing to implementation. And so that was really good, because they had quick feedback to us. Like day number one, our teams are seeing a slowing in the loading of the queues, and we could respond to that very quickly. So I think one thing that saved us a lot was the fact that we were close to our clients. There were direct communication channels. We had quick feedback mechanisms, so we can stay on top of that. I think lots of clients and products who didn't have that healthy client communication channel probably suffered in a big way, especially also if they had to still adapt their own internal processes to handling that. So I would say that we were lucky, maybe by experience, or maybe by just pure luck, that our team was sufficiently okay to work from remotely. We had great communication structure with our clients, the design partnerships thing, and we also had a big focus on our clients. I mean, we are benefiting now from the COVID situation through more use cases, more clients, more users. But it definitely wasn't like our first thing, let's make money. The first thing was, let's make sure everybody's okay.
Absolutely right.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think I've spoken to people, and particularly when we started this sort of level of filming, there were people there who were panicking and went into big sales mode, and there were a lot of people who did it absolutely right, which was saying, right, let's get priorities sorted out first. Let's look at our customers and make sure we're there. They stopped selling, they pulled back from it, they increased value, They looked at it from a longer term basis and saying, right, how can we help people through this sort of period? And that didn't stop sales, that increased sales almost instantaneously. And I love that sort of concept. And do you know what, the bit you said there about the sort of team Zoom lounge, I've been speaking to people for numerous different reasons all the way through this year, hundreds and hundreds of people, and hearing what they've been doing both in my industry and the fintech industry, and friends and family in between. And that is probably one of my favorite ideas of how you replace the water cooler.
Exactly.
And because no one's got that right. No one's given me something there, which I've written it down. No one's given me that sort of great answer to it. I think it's absolutely brilliant, potentially because that's something which you were already looking at, and a business there that is remote by nature is absolutely putting that on play. So I love that. I loved hearing about that. And
you're welcome to use it. You're welcome to talk about it. You're welcome to.
I'm stealing it. I'm stealing it for sure. Listen, tell me a little bit about what you think this holds, moving further forward, because we're there and we've had this sort of abrupt change to working practice. We were speaking before, and as you just mentioned, you can see people who've got the same service delivery from Cape Town, from Portugal, from anywhere and everywhere. Does this disrupt the city centre? Does this disrupt the office? Are we going to see a gradual return to the same as, or are we going to see a completely different world as we move into the 2020s?
I think so. Everything in the world always overshoots and undershoots. So there are companies, I think, who are not, well, I think I've heard them say, especially some big ones saying, oh no, we're going to reduce our office footprint by 2/3 because we don't need it anymore. Some companies you've all heard said, oh, people all work remotely until like end of next year. I personally think that there's going to be an overshoot and undershoot. So I think people are going to actually try and stay away from work for a bit, or others are going to try and flood back to work. I personally think that there's been a few ground shifts in that happened this year. The first one is around some people and companies just said, there's no way my team or my business can work remotely, because they think the way you can have control and the way you can risk manage is by having physical presence over people. This year showed you like you don't have a choice. You have to work remotely, so therefore you have to adapt your processes, teams, and tools around that. So I think what's going to happen is that there's definitely going to be a hybrid situation, and so it's probably too soon to tell whether it's going to be to reduce your office footprint by half or by quarter, because obviously you don't want to like have people go through a second shock. However, there will definitely be a change, and I must tell you, I've noticed through talking to some of our clients that some of them are keen on the WeWork model. Now, I think we all thought that WeWork this year was going to have a tough year because suddenly people working remotely and their entire business plan is about having people in the office. However, I think the business model that's going to be in shock is the long lease permanent office site. I think most people are going to want to have the flexibility of a WeWork type setup whereby you can scale up, scale down your office needs, and then have that in a fully serviced office. So I think actually WeWork has a huge opportunity to become a bit more flexible, because most companies, I know even some law firms in London who have gone to a similar to WeWork setup. Can't remember what the company is, and so I think that's definitely that way. The other big thing, though, I think we have to realize is this whole new concept, not new concept, but the concept of asynchronous working and location independence. So people used to say, well, actually, I've got this team in London, I've got this team in New York because I need those people in those high value locations. But what happened with the whole COVID thing is people from London decamped to Portugal and worked in Portugal for 4 or 5 months during the lockdown that I know of specifically. And so suddenly what's happened is you're no longer location bound, because you can now do stuff from everywhere in the world. Having said that, obviously there is something to be said about building rapport and relationship in prime locations, but this location independence concept, I think, is going to take more and more precedence. Now, offshoring has been that concept for a long time. I'm talking about individual location independence. So me as this one person can work from anywhere in the world, as opposed to, let's offshore this process to another team. The other big thing is asynchronous working. So we all used to think, let's all come into office and work from 8 to 5, because that's when our most productive time. But now we're all working from home. We've had children, we've had homeschooling, we've been in different time zones. And suddenly we realize, actually, we can work from 7 to 10 and then again from 5 to 10 tonight and get the same amount of work done. So I think this has unlocked significant value through the people realize that asynchronous working, it's not working 9 to 5, but working when it suits me or when I'm needed, is unlocks a lot of value. Also means people work at times that are more suitable to their own rhythm than having to be in an office in that space. So I think that the big thing that people haven't spoken about yet is asynchronous working. How do teams maximize that, but more as opposed to having to be 9 to 5 in the office and then missing out on other productive times.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting, particularly around the function. So in technology, that absolutely works, doesn't it? In other areas, it's going to be interesting to see how it adapts, because the client-facing sort of positions is if your clients are there or not there, and how does that all work out? So it's going to be some shaking out to do, and I agree. It's going to be. I think there is a fundamental shift in the change, and I do think we'll be seeing. I don't think it's going to be quite the revolution that everyone thinks, and city centres completely flop. But I do think there's things there. This has been something that's shown that things can be 100% done better. Andrew, I want to move into this product piece that we've touched on a couple of times now, because I've been fascinated this year by the sort of backgrounds of founders that we've been speaking to, and I think traditionally you've probably seen 2 or 3 different sort of founder sets, the technologist and the senior technologist who's then sort of seen a solution and led from a very tech point of view, and potentially missed some of the commerciality aspects of being able to translate that product into real value and a solution for the customers. And then on the other side, the sort of entrepreneurial sales background, who's brought tech people with them to solve a problem, or come through from a financial background and the business side and gone through there. One of the things I think that's been marked this year is the companies who seem to have had that sort of rocket ship trajectory over the last couple of months has seen a big swell of product owners, product managers, CPOs who've come through and started to build really successful and scalable businesses because of it. And one of the things I've also seen is in those companies, one of the most important roles has become the chief product officer, or the head of product. Again, probably more mandates that we've had this year in that space than at any other stage in 21 years of working in financial technology recruitment over that sort of period. It's been a massive rise in product as a requirement from people.
Yeah.
So I find it very, very interesting that your title changed from CEO when you kicked it off through to CPO and co-founder. And I'm really interested in looking at that sort of journey and the importance of putting someone. And you mentioned it beforehand. Look, you're there, and it's almost customer first, product first. And then you've got people around you who are looking at other areas of it. Tell me a little bit about that journey, because I think it is something that is truly interesting at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. So from the very get-go, our product has always been very customer responsive. It's always these 2 extremes. Like you have people who build product only for customer, and then people who build product and then they think the customers just like it. We have this hybrid middle ground. So we have 3 design principles that is unbending, unwavering. So we built one UDML that's available for the entire market. We do not take away any of the flexibility of email. We just put structure around it. And we always have all rights around what we build, what we don't build. But then within that, we only build stuff that clients ask for. So if they, for example, we built this new button recently called the Get Next button that says, so I'm in a team of 10 people, give me the next task that is due, that doesn't have an owner yet. Now, and that then meant that this team suddenly just was able to get through the backlog and get stuff done because they took away the decision factor. They just took work all along. And so what we do is, we all the times, we stick to these design principles so that we don't go off away from our vision, but we build what clients want, so we respond to what they want ultimately. So we stick completely to what they want. Now on the commercialization bit, so we from the start built it based on what clients want, so therefore we're quite close to it. But I remember as a founder, we like 5 people in the company. We're going to pitch into a big bank. Big bank does a pilot, it's great. You go into the calls and you say, they say, oh, can you please look at this? And I say, yeah, sure, I'll speak to my team and I'll come back to you. And you go like, I spoke to my team and they said, sure, we can do it. Yeah. But because you're desperate for the deal, you then say, well, fine, everything over 1,000 users, we'll just charge you £5 a month. And then when our professional investors came on board, they say, well, actually, no, that's not right. You don't have to be desperate, because now we have a commercial team, we have pricing behind you. So you do the product and we'll take care of the commercials.
Yeah.
And that. And so it was just good to have, like, you don't have to be the salesman and the employer and the salary payer and the product guy. You can actually separate the two, and they come with on the back of that. So in terms of my personal journey from going from actually, we're quite a close senior management team. So although, we have different roles right now, we do stuff through consensus, so when we talk about the big client pricing, we do it together. It's just good that we have someone else on there. But, our product's always been client aligned within our design principles. So we don't get, our clients will tell us, take us off route. But it was just great to separate the commercial side from the product side, because, you don't say, I'm going to speak to my team about pricing. My team says yes. it's just
the car sales world of sales, isn't it?
Exactly.
I've also seen that. I mean, look, there's been more and more conversation around pricing and competitive pricing and positioning. And I've seen some really good consultancies, do some great work around that. And I think there's a massive. I was speaking to someone the other day, a friend of mine who runs a business who was told, accidentally sent something in a negotiation process from a customer, and he realised very quickly that he'd underpriced by almost £250,000 in what he should have been positioning from it. And that to me just shows pricing as a weapon. Is something combined with that that product piece, and that commerciality alongside the product pieces are two things that are so important to get right together.
100%. But what I've also learned is pricing isn't just pure numbers; it's also the soft things that goes with it. So, for example, I mentioned this design partnership arrangement. That has been so valuable for both us and the client that's probably as important as the pricing we've done for them, because it means that we both get direct feedback on the end of it. And then also, you're in this funny place, because if you charge too little, they don't value it. If you charge too much, you don't get the deal. So that sweet spot is always something that
real challenge.
Exactly, you have to aim for. But the lesson is that the soft things around it, so design partnership or service levels, those things are very important, just compared to the pure number, which obviously is part of the bigger equation.
An absolute journey of discovery, and I love hearing this. I love these founder stories, and I love hearing the sort of things you're going through. And to me, I think everything you've just spoken about there about why products are so important is why we will see that as a continuing trend. Next year, I think the sort of significance of a strong product person in financial technology next year will be one of the most. I'm saying it in most of my conversations right now. That hire is a crucial hire, and for you to be able to sort of lead the charge on that, I think is a great asset to the business, right?
Because the main thing is, as I mentioned, so my job is to guard those principles, because people always say, well, build what the client wants. Well, no, we set out to solve the email problem by making email fit for purpose of business. The way we do it is through these design principles, and we can build stuff around it. So half my job always is saying no, because, and then people like it. So we get more and more take up because we stick to our problem, as opposed to being taken off course, and then you end up building a product that just some people want, not all people want, and then you're in no man's land. So there's a very delicate balance between having design principles and then having a process around it to take in design partner feedback on the back of that. So my job is always no, because.
That sort of thing. I know that's a really interesting piece, isn't it? Because when we become so customer led, and there is so much need, in my mind, in the digital world, because of everything that's going on, that instant gratification and instant demand, that people want, bells and whistles that are added on. And yes, there's a massive importance to have bespoke things that can answer the specific problems of each individual. But also, I think companies can sometimes run the risk of becoming too broad in answering problems that are there, and that sort of that low-hanging fruit is a very dangerous one to pick sometimes when I think in terms of who and where you want to position yourselves. And I think you're doing absolutely the right things for what it's worth from me. Ludre, we've as I said, it would shoot through this time, and it's done its job once again. I think it's a fascinating business you've got there. I'm hoping that people have listened to this and sort of shared my sort of enthusiasm for what you've been talking about, and will want to reach out and get in touch with you. Who should be getting in touch with you, and who can you help, and how do they get in touch with you?
So in our world, people who lead the operations teams, operations managers, operations MDs, In fact, any high volume team that's got an email problem, how do you allocate work inside that team, and how do you track all the way through it, can get in touch with us. Because we solve email for the enterprise, and so any of those high volume shared mailboxes, we'd love to talk to you. We're already live in quite a few sectors, all the way from banking to recruitment to outsourcing. So anybody in that space, especially even HR these days, would be a good fit.
Absolutely.
In fact,
absolutely.
Any high volume shared mailbox, come speak to us. We'd love to work with you, please.
Good man. Good man. And how do they get in touch with you?
So just normal email address called udo@iNBOTiQA.com. I know that's probably too many letters. Maybe you can put it like in the subscript. So
I'll put it in. I'll put it down there. No problem at all. We'll tag you in and get that going from there. Listen, I am jealous of you as I look out that window. Just past your shoulder, it looks like the day is heating up. So I'm going to let you crack on with it. It's been an absolute pleasure, and thanks so much for giving taking the time to share that story with it. We will be putting this out in the new year. By the time it's aired, so I hope you have a brilliant Christmas in between. And I am certain that 2021 will shine on you. Ludre, thank you so much for sharing your story today. Absolute pleasure, and thank you all for watching. We'll see you soon on another episode of Fintech Focus TV. Thanks so much.